in the last couple of weeks when all of this just kind of came to a head, right? And culminating in this like BU incident, we are all really feeling a whole mix of emotion. And so we say, okay, rotan, or like do something that is, punitive without actually making sense of all of these emotions. My view is that we're always going to find something that is external to blame. So in this case, a lot of people talk about social media being the instigator, of this sort of violence. But the reality is that it's always been happening. It's just that with social media, media that's always available to us, these cases come to light much quicker.
Okay.
But I was reflecting on this, right, and thinking about how, if you want to look at what people blame as being the factor for all of this kind of violence, you look at an SPM karangan. I don't know if you remember this, but in school they used to say, okay, gejala black metal, everybody who heard black metal would be like this case, prone to violence. Yeah, precisely. But then now, because social media is available, then we externalize it to being social media being the problem, right? And so, actually, my sense is that this is pervasive, and we need to start looking at ourselves first before we, pin it on something else that is probably not involving us.
Yeah.
Hello guys, and welcome to this episode of Siapa, Makan, Cili with me, your host Iqbal, and
me, Chuck. Hi. And we have two special guests with us today, here to discuss the issue of child safety, especially in schools, and the recent spate of violence. We have Felicia Yoon, founder of Arus Academy, and Wan Faria Ahmad Fahmi, independent gender consultant. Okay, so guys, let's just talk a little bit more about yourselves. Maybe we can introduce you guys to the audience at large.
because we both, Chai and I both invited you to this separately.
Yes.
But then found out that both of you have lore together.
Yes.
What was that lore?
So we were both teachers back in 2013. We did a fellowship called Teach for Malaysia, and we were in the same batch. So basically we taught for 2 years, but in two separate schools. So Fariha taught in Perak and I taught in Penang.
And were you guys teachers before you joined the TFM fellowship, or upon joining the TFM fellowship?
I wasn't. Fariha also.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was tahun bila ni?
2013.
2013 we
2013,
started,
right? Yeah.
but in 2012 we were
Training.
training together. We were actually housemates.
Yes.
You were housemates!
We were housemates.
Dude, we went our separate ways, and we ended on two housemates.
It has a funny way of bringing
Itulah
people
pasal.
together,
During the training lah, yeah. During the training we were housemates together.
Because the training was how long?
2 months.
2 bulan, around that, yeah.
Okay,
So-
so dah rapat sebelum kita orang paksa korang berapat
Yes.
ke atas kursi ni, okay?
Yeah, betul.
We're happy for you guys to be reunited on our podcast.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, this is the first time I think that we're doing something like this together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask, in this TFM training, what do you guys actually learn to go out there and be good teachers? Because that's what TFM is supposed to do, Teach from Malaysia.
So for Teach from Malaysia, essentially they take in young graduates or young professional who does not necessarily have education background. So we did not study to be teachers, but we all have degree in different fields. So for example, I have a degree in actuarial science, and then Fariha has something totally different as well. But what unites us is the desire to want to do something with our education system. And I think that exists in many youth. So when we go into the training, desire alone is not enough. Because when you go into schools, you are actually teachers of many students. So the training helps us to be prepared for that. So we are taught different pedagogies in terms of how to approach students. We learn a lot of student management. We even learn about, we call it DCA. So even managing like culture differences, how do we make sure that when we go into a community, we do not offend easily the people around. So thinking about the context of our students and learning a lot of just how to be a teacher lah, essentially.
I'm curious, would a non-TFM teacher receive the same trainings that you guys did?
Yes, so
Yeah.
we were trained by University Utara Malaysia, and they put together a postgraduate diploma in education for us. And so this is actually part of the kelayakan ikhtisas that a lot of teachers will need to have if they're in school.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we were teaching and studying at the same time.
So functionally, walaupun you background actual science, you background benda lain, tetap sama, qualification tu tetap sama lah dengan cikgu biasa.
The requirement, yes. So kalau nak masuk sekolah, you must have either education degree or you buat postgraduate diploma in
Okay.
education. So that was the one that we did under the Teach for Malaysia program. Yeah.
Got it.
So kualifikasi dia sama lah.
Tengah cakap about Teach for Malaysia, Faria, you were also with Teach for All, kan?
That's right.
Which is the parent organisation for Teach for Malaysia.
Yes, so I was their global head of girls' education. So Teach for All is an independent of, I wouldn't say it's like a parent organization, but it's a coalition of like networks of independent like partners in different countries. So I think there are about 62 at last count across the globe lah, that work on ending education inequity in the different contexts of these
How
countries.
did you end up there?
Oh, it's a very long story. But one of the things that Teach for All did was a Global Girls Education Fellowship.
Okay.
And so when I became a parent, which was some years ago, I started to realize that there are a lot of gender imbalances in our society. And what that means is that, when you are giving birth, for example, people tend to minimize the pain of women. When we are actually telling you we're in pain, people say, oh tak ada apalah, sikit je, that kind of thing, and just downplay it, but we're the ones who are living this experience, right? So that was one part of it. And then in my teaching days pun, there were times when girls weren't allowed to lead, for example. And so I didn't have the tools that I needed at the time to really figure out how to disrupt this sort of gender inequity that I was seeing.
Okay.
And so when I did that fellowship, a lot of things just suddenly became very clear to me. And so
Interesting.
the thing about gender is that once you see it, you cannot unsee it,
Yeah.
So after doing that fellowship, I moved on to different roles in my field, I suppose. Did my master's in gender and education. And the long story of that is basically that I saw an opportunity to recontextualize some of the things that were in the fellowship to things that were much needed in developing nations, for example. Sometimes, and I know this is going to be probably triggering to some people out there, but when we think about feminism, right, in the Malaysian context, start lah, all of these comments just come out, but actually we're just looking for a situation where men and women are treated equitably, and that doesn't happen. So that's kind of how I decided to do something about that lah.
I guess, was there a particular instance in your role where it kind of encapsulates what you were trying to do? In your role masa kat Teach for All?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I ran the Girls Education Fellowship program after that. I was a participant and then I became the person who designed the program itself. And so what that looked like was me working with early career teachers to understand the state of gender inequity in their classrooms and in their communities.
And ni cikgu from all over the
And
world?
cikgu from all over the world. I worked with over 25 different teachers from 25 different countries. And so their contexts are all very different, from Afghanistan to Peru to Portugal, Nigeria. So everybody has a different context. But sometimes when we think about gender, it's always what the West tells us
Okay.
is this idea of gender equity or gender equality.
Contoh?
So contohnya macam,
yang mungkin beza antara on the ground versus apa orang barat cuba itu?
oh my gosh, okay, that's a lot. Okay, so sometimes there is this idea that, maybe in the Western context, maybe gender is a spectrum, right? So there can be situations where
Tak ada
gender or all genders. Obviously, in a context like Malaysia, that's not going to be acceptable, right? And so there are in Western schools and countries, for example, we have situations where you have a third gender sort of bathroom, contohnya lah. But you can't have that sort of design here in Malaysia. But what you can do is make sure that the girls' toilets are safer, for example, or that the boys' toilets, where I think boys like to congregate sometimes, like smoking and all of that. At least that was my experience. They can change the design to be more responsive to the boys' experience in school, for example.
Okay.
So dekat kau punya LinkedIn, you wrote something about raising the next generation of gentlemen?
No.
Was it exactly?
Next generation of good men.
Good men, I'm sorry.
That's my baseline.
Yes,
I'm not asking
good
for
men.
much.
And then
Asking too much.
God has blessed you with that opportunity in
Yeah.
terms of your children.
Yes, that's right. I have 3 boys, 8, 5, and 2. So I'm looking at all the theory that I've learned along the way, coming to life in my day-to-day lah. So, I think that's of all the many things that I've done in my career, this is probably the most important thing that I'm doing.
Cuba you
for the
buat A/B
nation.
testing. You beritahu nombor 1 benda ni.
Oh my god, we need like ethics approval.
And Felicia, maybe you can tell our audience a little bit more about what Arus does as well, and what the kind of work that you've been doing in Arus.
So in Arus, we started out, so after our teaching fellowship, so it lasted about 2 years in school. And so I'm not just the founder, there's 4 of us. So I'm one of the co-founder, and all 4 of us were from the same Teach for Malaysia cohort. And while we were in school, when you enter, it's very much like gung-ho, you want to do something. But in the 2 years, you realize there isn't that much you can do, but what you can do is really understand what's going on the ground. So that 2 years really was a learning for us. And after that, that's when you feel like, okay, there's more that I can do. Now that it's the analogy of like, you see an accident, now you feel like you have to do something. You cannot just walk away. So that was how Arus was born. Because of our experience in school, we realized that students, a lot of them, they don't come to school because they already lost interest in learning. They don't see how what they learn in school is related to their real life. They see it very isolated.
Yep.
Baca dalam buku-buku je. Tapi dia tak nampak benda ni memang is happening around us. Right? So that's the idea of Arus actually. We want to make education meaningful for students, and we started off with coding and programming. Because back in 2015, that was when coding started to really, got a boom. And the interesting thing was we didn't choose it because the world was talking about it, but where our students were. Our students were in Bukit Metajam, and if you know Penang, Bukit Metajam or in this sort of Seberang Perai area is where all the big factories are. Now, however, our students are in this little town where they will never see themselves as the technology makers. They see themselves as the lorry drivers. They see themselves as the factory worker. And we wanted to change that narrative, right? Why can't you be the inventors? Why can't you be the people that create the innovation? And that's why we brought tech into their life, for them to see that actually things that you learn, the simple measurements that you learn in mathematics, you can use it to actually create a solution that improve your life. As simple as we had little kids that would make, their problem is parents ask them sweep the floor. Don't want to sweep the floor. Okay, make robot. Because when you make the robot, you make the prototype, then you can see actually you have to understand a bit of science, a bit of math to make everything come together, and the logic of everything. So that's the program that we do. And slowly from that, it has already been 10 years that we've been running this. And along the way, we realized there are many opportunities to make learning relevant for students. So we started going into financial literacy because money, is something everyone talks about. How do you make money meaningful for the students, right? So when we talk about money, we don't just teach them how do you manage it. We talk about how much do you need. So we link it back to what is your life goal. Because if you don't have a life goal, you will always think money is never enough. That's why there's people, you win lottery, still not happy.
Just 2 questions on that. The first one is, it's been 10 years now, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of impact have the programs had? And the second one is actually, how is this all funded?
Okay. So we, very early on, I'll answer the second question first, right? We wanted to be a social enterprise because we want to make sure that the beneficiary that we want to reach out to, we have enough funds to run that. So we had to think about very early on, what is our business model? How do we keep doing this for the people that need it without going to quote unquote beg for money? So we realized that the content that we make to make learning fun and meaningful is something that is sought after by anyone. So we started talking to a company. We were very lucky at that time. MDEC, the Malaysia Digital Agency, they were trying to go into secondary and primary education when it comes to coding. So we said, they saw what we were doing and they said, we would pay for you to create more content. And that's why we realized the content that we make has value in it. So that's how we sort of get money. So we create programs that is meaningful for students. We look for the beneficiary that needs it. We get these people that have money to pay for the program.
Wonderful.
So that's how we've been funding. And in terms of impact, there is a lot, right? I mean, you can go to our website, you see like hundreds and thousands of students that have been impacted through our program. But I think what is very important for us is always remembering that the program that we make it has to be meaningful for the students. So even if someone comes to us and they say, okay, I want to do girls education, for example, we do a lot of like talking, okay, why do you want to do girls education? What about girls education that you really want to hit as the objective? And then we'll design the program around that. So we have our wide impact where we go out and run program, but we also make sure that there are deep impact, which is one of the newest project right now is working with a local community, Buku Jalanan Chowkit, and to really help the students in that Chowkit area as well. Yeah.
Coding also.
We started off with coding.
Yep.
So we went in because they were like, okay, can you do this with our children? And we started with that.
Yep.
And you can see they were amazing. And we didn't really know the background of the students. And then we found out that these are really the most marginalized children, having documentation issues, no access to education. And then as we went on, there was opportunity for us to then do pretty much a day-to-day school. We wouldn't call ourselves a school, we call it more of a learning center, because all these alternative learning center is not necessarily recognized as a school. Yeah.
Okay, with that, I think we need to move on to the topic of today, which is a big hangat topic. So literally, we have actually other podcast clips that we wanted to release kan. Tapi kita takut, to release now, because no one is talking about the entire weekend kan. Like your entire social media feed was full of this tragic case of the stabbing in BU. And what we did was we reached out to our fans as usual, on our social medias and asked them what they thought would be potential solutions to curb this recent spate of violence in Malaysia, especially in schools. And if you look at the news, it's all there, right? This was in BU, there's one in Malacca, there's one in Kedah. It's everywhere. There was this other case recently. This stat came out that Terengganu recorded 70 rape incest cases in the first 9 months of 2025, and they blamed youth and social media as well. So I guess the first question that I want to ask the two of you, based on your experiences on the ground, is this something that we're just noticing now that's been happening for years, or has there really been a sharp acceleration in the amount of cases that we're seeing?
That's a really good question. And, I think in the last couple of weeks when all of this just kind of came to a head, right? And culminating in this like BU incident, as someone who works in gender specifically, it's just felt so heavy, right? And I think we should start by acknowledging that we are all really feeling a whole mix of emotions. And so sometimes some of us in the attempt to process the emotion just go straight into action, right? And so we say, okay, rotan, or like do something that is, punitive, without actually making sense of all of these emotions. And so I think the important thing to say first is that, if you're feeling this mix, you're not isolated in feeling that. So I just want to acknowledge that first. And I think when we talk about whether this has been happening just recently, my view is that we're always going to find something that is external to blame. So in this case, a lot of people talk about social media being the instigator, of this sort of violence. But the reality is that it's always been happening. It's just that with social media, with the kind of media that's always available to us, these cases come to light much quicker.
Okay.
And I think, and this is really strange, but I was reflecting on this, right? And thinking about how, if you want to look at what people blame as being the factor for all of this kind of violence, you look at an SPM karangan, because you always see cases where they will say, okay, I don't know if you remember this, but in school they used to say, okay, gejala black metal, everybody who heard black metal would be like this case, prone to violence. Yeah, precisely. But then now, because social media is available, then we externalize it to being social media being the problem, right? And so, actually, my sense is that this is pervasive, and we need to start looking at ourselves first before we, sort of pin it on something else that is probably not involving us.
Sorry, so just to clarify, what you're saying is that these cases have always been there, and they're now only coming up to the surface because of this recent.
I think between the two of us, we
think
can
so.
tell you stories.
I think it is very true, right? I think even when you see the way news have been reported, even smaller cases suddenly come to light. And these are things that school have been dealing with, and it's not, I wouldn't say there is a sudden surge in amount of cases, but there's more attention and light being put onto it, which is
Pasal
not
media.
necessarily a bad thing, you know.
It's our fault, man.
Betul lah tu. Sebab tu kita dapatkan dia orang kat sini.
So
Untuk
this is more
balance,
attention lah kan. This is
untuk
more
balance
conversation.
kita punya dosa.
Yeah.
Astaghfirullah. No, but really, macam when we were, like, if I can share, macam some of the situations that happened when I was teaching even, was that I had a student who had her name, I'm not going to share her name, tapi there was a 25 attached to it. Like, so she would be known as whatever her name was, 25. And because that was the rate, she would charge for services.
Jeepers, creepers.
Yeah. 60.
Oh my god.
That's one incident.
Tapi macam mana benda tu boleh sampai ke pengetahuan cikgu?
Oh, back then, Iqbal, I was young. I didn't know. I looked like one of the.
One of the students, yeah.
Felicia will attest to that. We've been friends for a while.
Yeah.
So they would be very, they would confide, right? And that's the thing with teenagers. They want a trusted adult to talk to.
Yeah, true. I think some of it also, it depends on why they're doing it. Sometimes also that's why they want to share, because that's also how they are processing a lot of things that they're experiencing. There's a lot of things that we know is happening, but also like, what can we do, right? I think that's a question that needs to be asked. Because when you hear about things like that, of course, I think the stabbing one is a little bit extreme. I wouldn't say that's something we see every day, but all the other events leading up to it, in terms of what we are seeing in the news, are things that are happening.
Because I guess what was insane was just the distance between, first it was Zara Khairina, and then it was the sexual assault case in the other school, and then like it just seemed to be one hit. It really felt overwhelming.
And so what you guys were saying is that the pace hasn't really accelerated at all, that these kind of things have been happening everywhere in Malaysia. It's just that now, because of the Zaya Karina and then this BU incident, it's 2 in a row, so suddenly the media are like, hey, there's a trend here.
Pick it up, I think there is a bit of truth in that. I think to really say with certain, we definitely need proper data. I think through proper data, we can really see what is the pattern. So it's easy for us to right now say, because the data we have is through media. So that's what we see. But again, to really know whether there is a sharp increase this year or not, we have to then go back to actual data.
Is there?
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
So I think in Malaysia, data is something that a lot of people struggle to get. But if you look deep enough, there are a lot of statistics. And I learned this because I teach economics to my students. And I realized that actually Bank Negara publish a lot of data. Like you can easily find a lot of interest rate, Reserve Negara, like our National Reserve rate. They're all published. It's just that when you don't need it, you're not going to look for it. So it's knowing where to look for it, and then now that we want to look for it, making sure that there is.
Yeah, and stats.gov publishes excellent data.
Yes,
that's right.
exactly.
I'm just curious about contohnya, like Rizab Negara, fine, they have to publish it because they have to, but then something like this, macam bilangan
Perkara buruk lah.
bilangan perkara buruk yang berlaku kat sekolah, USJ, whatever. There seems to be diorang macam would have an incentive to not report that data, maka the data by itself tak boleh dipercayai sangat.
That's true, but I'm also going to say that beyond the macam reporting, there's also under-reporting, right? Because when the case happens, let's say you are a child and macam you tell your parent or you tell the teacher,
tapi dia orang tak percaya,
they're not going to
or
trust
like,
you.
so dia tak masuk dalam statistics But I think to give a bit of benefit to back to the data, right? So sometimes it's not just government doing data. They can also be think tanks that are doing data, which then this data we can trust a little bit more. I think there is that sentiment of like, would they want to downplay some of the data because it doesn't look good, right? But recently, so one of the program that I'm part of next week, so with all this ASEAN going on, one of the topic that is going to be discussed is out of school children. So we're looking at data in terms of, and this is something that the government took initiative to collect data to identify how many students have risk of being out of school. So again, it won't look good on us, but I think that is a step forward, because if you don't have the data, you're not going to know what to do with the data. So this one is done more with the education ministry. So they actually went and did the data. So the data has not been presented. So next week during the conference, the ASEAN conference, it will be presented and be
And
discussed.
this is the first time that such a
As far as I know, I think so. I think it's the first time that so they had all their indicators of like reasoning, what would make a child be out of school or at risk of being out of school, and then they collected data around that. So
Wow.
apparently every child in Malaysia they identified.
Speaking of government initiatives, so Felicia, we had a conversation and we found out that you're actually consulting for something that everyone's talking about right now, which is
Yeah.
the new syllabus for pendidikan character.
Yes.
So the first thing I will tell you is that somebody that I know very dear to me actually asked, why are they teaching karate to students?
Karate.
So we understand that you are consulting for this pendidikan character.
Yeah.
The first thing that I want to clear up is this a new thing or is this something that's been worked on for quite some time now?
So interestingly, if you open, I think the MOE social media this morning, they actually put out some guidelines on how this curriculum is going to be done.
Yeah.
So they put out guidelines of like it's going to be 60 minutes a week and so on. So actually, I do want to say that I believe it's not new because if you talk to many teachers, the government has already presented Curriculum 2027 because it's coming up. So schools are aware of this Curriculum 2027. Probably parents not so much, if especially you're not in that sort of like circle, right? You probably don't know, but these are things that has already been communicated. And part of Curriculum 2027 is pembentukan karakter actually. It is already inside. How it is being done, that's not something that has been announced. And even for me, I also don't know. So I think it's still being built around that. But it's something that has been thought about ever since they wanted to revamp. So every 5 years, our syllabus is revamped. So that's something that maybe not everyone know, but it is a fact in Malaysia.
Okay.
So every 5 years, we will review the syllabus and they will start building. Of course, a few years prior to that, they start building and they'll invite NGOs, they'll invite teachers, they'll invite many different parties because ARUS does all these different areas, right? So even with STEM education, we were also invited to consult on the new syllabus. And that's an initiative that I think, it's not that I'm pro or whatever government, but I think good things should be highlighted, right? So they do try and make an effort to talk to people about what's going on.
Okay, so let me contextualize this for what the public is currently thinking. And I think our frame of reference when we heard about pendidikan character is pendidikan moral. Okay?
Oh, interesting.
So I am a very
Yes.
proud F9 in pendidikan moral. Dalam sekolah saya hanya 2 orang F9 je.
Okay, saya A1
The high achievers speak.
untuk moral.
I want to say something but I'm not going to say
Okay,
it.
tak apa.
Yeah. The other failure from Methodist College, you know who you are. We're still friends. Yeah. What did you get, Iqbal? Oh, you took
like,
agama Islam kan?
Betul.
Yeah.
I didn't even take. I didn't go to school. I didn't.
Do you not take SPM?
So, okay, I need to ask, Kan. I mean, for everyone here,
Yes.
how do you address that concern that what they're teaching people are these values that we have to memorize versus actually instilling it into people? So how would you respond to that criticism?
So actually, from what I understand with pembangunan character, which is I think something that may not have been communicated in the best way, it's not moral education. It goes beyond it. So I think for us in ARUS, there is a program that we recently did with the teachers, and it's in line with the new curriculum that's going to come out. So it was a 10-month fellowship. It started last year. So that's why it's not like the government, the minister woke up one day and said like, okay, we're gonna, because of all these things that's happening, we're gonna do pembangunan character. You know, they approve us to do a 10-month training with teachers. We did it with 70 teachers across 5 different states. They came, and in this 10-month fellowship, right, we didn't talk about moral. We started the very first workshop, so there was 4 workshops. The very first workshop, we addressed what teachers are feeling and what teachers are experiencing. Because how can you teach students to manage their emotion or be aware about what's happening if you yourself dah tak stable, right? We have to acknowledge that teachers are under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure. And by acknowledging that and teaching the teachers skills to manage that, only then the teachers can see that I can also teach these skills that I've learned for myself to my students. So that was how we started.
So you're saying that this pendidikan character is not necessarily a new subject?
I don't know how it will turn out in the school. I think that we have to wait for the minister to sort of really explain how is it going to be carried out. But I want to say the content of it, right? The content of it is not meant to be like a moral subject. It's meant to circle around the whole fact of social awareness, your own self-awareness. And then we talk about responsible social decision making. So it's around that, right? It's not so much about what are values. We want to talk more about ethics. We want to talk more about just resilience. And so it's these skills that we actually want students.
Is there a particular macam set point or learning point yang maybe you boleh share for us to really wrap our head around on what
So
this
actually,
would look like?
it's not something new. So on our side, we actually, a few years back, we were taught this thing called social emotional learning, SEL. So SEL is not something new. You can look it up. There is a framework towards it. There are 5 components. So when we were taught that, we thought that this is what all students should need. And there has been a research that has been done. I think it was done by Harvard. So they did a longitudinal research. So meaning they followed the people that they did research with from they were in preschool all the way until they became adult. And this is something quite rare, right? That you do such a long-term research. And they found out actually, so they wanted to know, right, what really was the defining factor that made you successful as an adult. And surprisingly, they found out it's not, when you were young, it's not whether you can read first, it's whether your teacher taught you how to be resilient, whether your teacher taught you how to solve problems. So all these social emotional skills are the determining factor. Because when it comes to reading, eventually you'll catch up. Yeah. Something along the way will then help you catch up. Then there's not much advantage anymore. As adults, like you don't ask like, oh, when do you finish your degree? You know, we can be in the same job, different age, doing the same thing.
So then I have to ask you guys, as both teachers, do you think that our teachers, in broad strokes, not the TFM fellows or whatever, but the average everyday teacher, can carry these kind of nuances from our syllabus, whatever syllabus the ministry is going to set, down to our Malaysian students?
That's what we did with the 10 months. So after the first training, they learned pedagogy, how to do it with their students. Our 70 teachers went back to their school and they did it with their teachers. And there was so much
70 students, 70 teachers.
70 teachers,
How many teachers are there in Malaysia?
So I used to work with school counsellors in another role, school counsellors across different states in Malaysia. And I will say this, I think what you're asking is a really important question. But I also think it's about the growth mindset that the teachers have, you know. And I will, having worked with, you know, multiple teachers in Malaysia, I would say that our teachers are excellent. I have a lot of respect for them, and I think that this is one of the hardest jobs that you can do. You buy stationery, you cannot claim, like it's these kind of small
in school,
basic, in small basic things. But also imagine, as a parent, right? Like I have 3 children that I have to deal with. All of them have different developmental needs. Can you imagine a teacher who has to do this for like 40, 45 students, know them individually? I think in broad strokes, our teachers are great. And this is the hill I will probably die on.
That's great to hear.
And I think what is important to also know that, while yes, I agree, there's tens and thousands of teachers, but it goes back to planning and execution, right? I think if we do it, if we're able to figure that out, I think then that's great lah. Knowing that, of course, we have to support our teachers. You know, in the learning center that we run, we teach that to our teachers. So even with those skills, it's not easy for them, because once the students are comfortable with you, they may want to confide in you, and we learn something that is called secondary trauma as well, because students may start telling you things that is actually very heavy for you.
That's right.
And you have to then learn how to then manage it. So these are also skills and knowledge that the teachers will have to pick up, and they will need support. They will need support from the administrators to be able to keep carry on this. And I think government recently announced that they would, with the new budget, they would fund more counsellors in school, and I think that would help, because there's only so much the teachers can help. And then when it comes to difficult cases, of course, it's not on the teachers, it's on the counsellor to then also support.
And so you would imagine that, especially in the case of this BU case, and maybe a lot of the other cases, if that person had someone to speak to, things would have played out very differently.
So I think it's easy now to say in retrospect, right? I think, of course, we like to think that it could be prevented. That's why I like this analogy that I learned about water. So you have a calming lake, raging river, and a waterfall. So the BU case, clearly the guy was at a waterfall. So the intervention may look very different. But now, right, we're sitting at this calm waterfall. So the analogy is this, right? Most of the time, we see a child at the raging river. And then we rush in, we want to save. But it's very difficult because it's raging river, right? You want to save one, so much effort. But imagine there is so many other kids that are in the calming lake. Many of our kids are there, right? Calm lake, everyone's like, okay, macam nothing much, still water. And then suddenly they swim towards the raging river. So I think what we should also think about is that preventive measure. So that proactive measure, while they are in the calm lake, teach them how to swim. Right? Teach them how to swim, not just play around the lake. Teach them how to swim so that if they get to the raging river, we may still need to help them, but they already can swim.
Yep.
So when we pull them out, much easier.
I like
And
what you
that's the
said about
analogy.
trusted adult, actually, because I think, in all our different identities, right? Like all of us here, probably parents, uncles, aunties. So we have some sort of duty of care for the minors and the children in our lives, right? And so you can't adopt this attitude that, oh, it's not my child, not my problem, kind of thing. And so the collective responsibility is something that we all have in all our different roles.
I guess speaking of solutions, one of the things we asked our readers was what they think would be proper solutions to benda-benda yang kita nampak kat berita macam ni. So
Yeah. Remember Felicia, I said
Untuk
there's
ni, I
good and
pakai
bad news
spek
kan?
sikit,
Yeah, you have to, this one.
Kena
Kerana,
tengok elok
just now you said like, oh, it's good news, all the comments and all that. The bad news is, and this is quite funny, okay? So when we put the comments up, all the comments actually mention a lot of progressive stuff. Say, oh, parents need to be more mindful and all that, right?
Yeah.
Tapi for the poll, which is kind of anonymous, number one solution, rotan on both Malay and English social media sites.
That was the
So
difference.
maknanya dua belah pun, rotan is one of the most popular solutions for this problem. A lot of our readers were in favor of bringing back the rotan, and I think there's been a lot of narrative recently also about the rotan, but strangely enough from the comments there's very few supporting the rotan. So it feels like this rotan thing is some subversive culture, right? Everyone wants it but doesn't want to talk about it openly because they're afraid that they get judged or whatever lah.
Interesting.
So I wanted to ask you, because there's been a flood of content on my personal social media feeds, I think you guys as well, of all these teachers that are being punished for rotaning their students. Kan? Banyak. It's like everywhere. And it becomes a narrative of like, these guys are heroes. How do you guys feel about that?
Again, for me, right, I come from a place where I study all these things, right? So my first thought, because I learned empathy, my first thought is like, what actually happened, right? Like it makes me wonder, like, okay, how did, like, what rotan that had happened until kena tangkap, like this case in particular, right? I think that's something that a lot of times we don't necessarily teach the society now to be curious about things. That's where empathy comes in, right? Where you actually genuinely want to know what's going on. And that's why we are very quick to put certain people as hero, certain cases as what it is. We don't sort of be curious that, okay, sebenarnya what's going on? Kenapa dia pukul kat mana, sampai apa, sampai dia kena tangkap. That's one lah. But going back to the case of rotan, it is definitely a very hangat topic because everyone has different lived experience.
That's right.
And that's why education, paling hangat topic dia. Everyone has gone through education and everyone feels they know what is best. And that's why everyone has an opinion. So I also got opinion with rotan, which I think many people that is in my circle would not agree to it. I come from a Chinese school, Chinese primary school. And then secondary, I went to a national school, a normal national school. A high performing, but normal national school. So I've been rotan. So I get why people say like, turn out okay what? You look at Chinese school discipline, very good what? Everyone follow rules. But they always forget what was the negative effect. You're very quick to, because you're in support of it, right? So you're very quick to like, okay, this is all the good things. But you cannot not acknowledge that there were bad things as well. One of the negative effect for me, because I was brought up in that environment, when I was growing up, I was a very bad loser. And I was very afraid to try things. Farha would know I'm very competitive.
I actually call her Ayam because like Ayam Tambatan, you know, she's the number one person who like wants to win everything all the time.
So I'm that lah. Okay, so I wouldn't blame that. So competitive, a lot of people are competitive, but the fact that like I am to the level where I'm very afraid to make mistake, I wouldn't want to try something new. I will only do things that I'm good in, because back then, if I do something wrong, even if it's like in Chinese school back then, you get anything wrong, you get caned. And then that doesn't actually encourage you to want to learn something new. You will only want to do things that you're good in. Because I don't get rotan, what? I takut, what? Right? So there's always that negative effect that people are not saying.
On a count of 3, siapa pernah kena rotan sini? 1, 2, 3. Oh, semua. Okay lah. Nah, I just wanted to get context. Fariha, what about your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm going to bring in a bit of evidence
Okay.
that has come up recently. So the World Health Organization just released a technical report on corporal punishment in August 2025, and it explicitly looked at the perceived benefits and the risks from a public health perspective when it comes to corporal punishment, which includes like rotan lah, okay? And unsurprisingly, there are no benefits to
I read that
caning.
as well, yes.
Yeah, and in fact, the harm is actually intergenerational,
Yep.
which is what we're actually seeing now, even in like the anecdotes that we have, right?
Yes.
So some of the things include the one thing that I found was very interesting was actually the poor moral internalization. And so what that means is that you don't actually learn the lesson that is intended by the person rotaning you, which is that was wrong. You the takeaway for that is that if you do this, you're going to get caned. You still want to do it because again, brain development, right, and all of that. So you will find a creative way to achieve your objective. And in like teacher language, the objective of teaching them through rotan tak tercapai lah, because what are the lessons you're learning? The other thing is that actually enables us to normalize violence in society, because you are teaching the child that kalau you do something wrong, I can rotan you. I'm an adult, right? The adult has a position of power over this child and authority, right? This child cannot resist. This child cannot say, no, I don't want to be rotan. And the other thing, if you can inflict this sort of violence onto the child, you're not going to inflict this on like your colleague who, you know, takes MCs, or you're not going to inflict the rotan on like another adult, right? So why would you knowingly inflict this harm onto a defenseless child? And so
on that point of defenseless children, there was a case that a few people told me that in certain rural areas, the students are the ones that can hit the teachers, and they have no respect for the teachers, and that the teachers had to use a rotan to gain that kind of authority respect. How would you guys respond to that?
So again, we have to put on that curiosity lens, right, to find out that what is actually happening. So when we dissect problems like this, right, is to find out, okay, is the problem the child memang dah don't know what is respect, boundaries and so on. So what we need to teach is boundary. It's not necessary taking rotan and take back power and control.
Yeah.
Right? I think we are very quick to want to like, okay, use this as a solution, but we don't really see like, okay, sebenarnya apa masalah sebenarnya kat situ? Right?
And for the people who say like, you know, oh, I kena rotan, I turned out
tak
fine.
apa, yeah.
We had like evidence of how that, you know, has really harmful like longer term effects.
What kind of evidence?
Felicia just
So macam
told
for
us
me
that,
like because it was beaten out of me that like you
Right.
shouldn't make mistake, and that's a long term effect. So if I never had that realization of that, you will continue to be. That's why you see a lot of adults having certain behavior that they don't really understand why they're like that.
your social emotional development is actually distorted, and this is what the technical report found across like I think 69 different studies that they looked at, and especially if you inflict this on children and teenagers, because the way teenagers receive stressful environments is different from an adult, you know. So what are the lessons fundamentally that we want them to take away?
I am curious though. So in the way that you're able to attribute, certain your fear of failure to your experiences with corporal punishment, some people are also able to attribute, I am now a moral person who believes this because I had this belief beat into me, and for all intents and purposes, I believe them. I have no choice but to believe them when they say that. But then how does one kind of reconcile both of these? On the one hand, there's research saying this, but on the other hand, this person with their lived experience saying that.
Yeah, and to support that, the majority of the people that are supporting Rotan were people who kena Rotan.
But
Almost all of them is the older generation, not the younger generation.
But is to then ask them, right, why, what makes it effective? Like, kenapa bila orang rotan, you dah tak buat? Was there a behaviour change, or it's just sebab I takut di rotan, or what? Because that's the part we never really talk about, It's very quick, like, they say, and we say because it is that.
And were you the one that told me that one of your
Yes.
students asked for Rotan, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, it
My
goes
God.
back to this power thing, because they don't know any better.
That's true.
Right? So
Can you share that story?
yeah, so one of my teachers, so she is very kind. So she's also more into like, okay, want to understand the student and so on. So, we teach in that way. So then one day, one of the kid was like, because the class was a bit chaotic. And then so the kid suggested, cikgu, rotan je lah. Cikgu rotan, saya rasa semua orang akan dengar. And then the teacher didn't want lah, because then the teacher asked back, kenapa cikgu perlu rotan baru kamu nak dengar? Kenapa perlu rotan baru nak dengar? Padahal kamu semua tahu perlu respect cikgu. Kenapa perlu ada rotan baru kamu nak? And then the kids semua tak tahu. Sebab dulu macam tu lah. Sebab kita pernah kat rumah pun kena rotan baru kita buat. So kita macam tu lah, cikgu. So cikgu buat je lah macam tu. Lebih senang.
And usually when you rotan, right, is when you have reached your emotional limit, right? Like you are so angry, and so you react in anger. You're not. More often than not, you are going to use the rotan because you are yourself angry as an adult. And so the takeaway is that you are reacting to violence with more violence. As a child, it's like, sorry, like this is separate ni, tapi you know the game of chicken, like in political theory, right? Like, so you have like a weapon, I have a weapon, adult and teenager, right? So the adult, I hope, has like a natural like limit to the kind of violence that they are comfortable inflicting. Tapi the child has no such emotional like break. So when it all culminates in more violence, you jangan terkejut and ask lah, kenapa all of these things are happening?
Because the thing is, right, I have another story, right, about this boy. So this boy, he was very hyperactive. So back then, this was before we came in, one of the ways that the adults were handling this situation was to sort of like time him up, lock him up, at this room. And so we didn't know that backstory, And then so one day we look at him, he loved locking people in classroom. And we were wondering what's going on, like what's so fun about locking your friends in classroom? And then when we actually found out that was the punishment that he was given back then, and then we see that, because people did it to him, he thought, okay lah, why I cannot do to my friends?
I think one of the things that we posted as well was that one of my friends said that rotan is for naughty kids, not psycho kids. I know psycho kids is a bit strong of a word, but like in the case of back to the PU step, I don't think there's any universe where caning him would have improved the situation. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes,
there's no way. It goes back to like that, right? Like what is actually the solution?
Yeah,
and I would say, and as a parent and as a former teacher, right, it's always connection before correction.
Right,
Okay, so my read on this is that he probably didn't have the kind of connection and compassion that adults are supposed to be showing him in real life, which then leads him to seek out other avenues for validation, maybe for and we know this about teenagers, they have this need to find community, right? They are discovering who they are as people, so they want a sense of belonging. Is why, like, people join gangs and like join like all these like groups and things like that. So imagine what it would potentially have looked like if all children had support for, you know, a trusted adult or like a community that's like in person, in real life. Our world could potentially look a lot different.
Yeah. I think the best advice that I got from another parent very early on was that he's told his daughter, and his daughter is a teenager, saying that I promise, you have to promise me that you'll never keep any secrets from me, and I will promise never to get angry with you.
I love that. And that's exactly what I practice with my own son.
Yeah.
So we have these like moments of connection at the end of the day. He cannot sleep unless we have a little chat, he calls
Wow,
it.
that's
So
amazing.
we've done this for like 2 years now. And so he's like, can we have a chat? And so he will come. I know, right? So he will come and he will ask me, what is the best part of your day? And I actually have to think about it. And so I will say something. More often than not, I will tailor it to like his experience lah. So I say, oh, the best part was getting to pick you up at school, or like something that like makes him feel seen and and secure in that connection, right? And then I will ask him back, like, what's the best part of his day? More often than not, it's like, oh, getting to play like computer games with my friends or like whatever lah, these things, because that's his like experience, right? But I'm hoping that if we instill this sort of little pockets of connection, when the issues get harder to talk to, he's
You already have the space.
And it's same in school. You know, we may feel it's so difficult to do as teachers. You have 40 over students in one class.
Yeah.
But sometimes when someone act out, as simple as asking what happened to you today rather than why are you like that, that simple rephrasing could mean the world to the fellow. Nobody have ever asked me what happened to me. Everyone always just asks me why am I like that. I also don't know why I'm like that. But if you ask me what happened to me, I could tell you. This morning, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, for example.
Yeah. So the main solution that was highlighted in the comments, yang banyak sekali kan, is parents. Parents. Literally, people just put parents. They don't put any like, more subtlety.
Yeah,
Parents.
just parents.
Yeah. See what
Thanks,
you did.
I guess.
Yeah. And it's this. The first slide is basically just like parents are wrong. Parents, what were his parents doing? We get into a little bit more subtle. So yang subtle ni, they're saying like, this one actually came from a teacher. So this one is very interesting. So she said that basically, I can't handle your kid the way you can.
Interesting.
You know, so I thought that was an interesting thing to put in there. The other one is about permissive parenting, which as you know, in let's just say Mongkiara, Bangsa, that kind of area, you see quite a lot of permissive parenting.
I guess then I do want to linger on this point a bit, like parents. And fine, it's easy to say parents, kita boleh blame parents as sumber utama kenapa kanak-kanak tiba-tiba jadi tak guna. Tapi like, how do we make that conversation slightly more nuanced? To what extent is the problem parents, if that is the problem at all? And if the problem is parents, to what extent can there be interventions to help parents make good humans?
I think what you said tadi kan, tiba-tiba macam-macam tu. I think people need to realise that nothing is tiba-tiba.
Yes.
Betul.
It seems like it's tiba-tiba, but it never is tiba-tiba.
Kerana orang sosial media lah.
You know, and I think that's why it's quick to blame the parents, because parents paling dekat right dengan kids, and people will assume parents lah selalu yang ada dengan kid, but there's many different factor. And I think because Fariha is a parent, I'm not a parent. My kids are like my students, so maybe Fariha can talk a little bit about parent.
Okay,
Before,
so I will do my best to represent the like parent
And let's
community.
contextualize this conversation a little bit. Let's not talk about whether the solution is social media or rotan or whatever, but let's talk about the responsibility of parents within bringing up their child.
Okay, that's a very important like distinction to make, and I think I come into it with the lens of a Muslim parent. And someone who has worked in intersectional feminism for a while. Okay, so is it fair to pin the entire responsibility on parents? No, because everybody has a different parenting experience. There are, two-parent families, there are single-parent families, there are parents who are co-parenting, parents in long-distance relationships, where the dad is probably working in Singapore or somewhere else, or the mom is working somewhere else in a different state, for example. So to collectively lump all parents together and say that we all have the same sort of access to resources and education and all of that is unfair. Wow, what was that?
My foot, I'm so sorry. Please continue. Yeah.
So I think beyond looking at parents, right, as a collective group, we must also look at like what the other like factors around these parents are. So macam in public health, for example, we talk about the socio-ecological model. And what that means is that you look at the individual level factors and the community level factors, right? So even, I think between Felicia and I, we can talk about how the parents we know of the students that we teach, or even us, all have different like lives that we lead, right? So I had students who never saw their parents because they lived with their grandparents, for example. They worked from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. every day to pay rent for themselves and their grandparents. Their parents were, separated. We have parents who work shifts, like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Most of the, their online presence is malam-malam.
Yep.
When would these parents have time to monitor? And then, of course, okay, you have the Bangsa parents or like the Mont Kiara parents. And then it could very well be that they are simply too busy to to actually be a present parent because they have a lifestyle to maintain, for example, or like a job that they actually have like weird hours for. I'm talking from personal experience lah, of course. So the question is not whether parents are to be blamed. It's like what other conditions can enable parents to actually be present with their children and to build that sort of connection with their children before they can correct the behaviour of the children. So macam Felicia said tadi, it doesn't happen like tiba-tiba, right?
Yeah.
There are all these like warning signs almost that you almost have to like know what to look out for before something happens.
So the reason I asked that question was because one of the comments I recall kind of reading when everything was blowing up, folks, and I understand where this was coming from, place of anger, place of concern, there were suggestions that mungkin elok kalau budak-budak buat benda tak like illegal or whatever, parents kena the punishment too. And I assume you guys think that's a terrible idea.
I think we always, when something happened, right, we always want something to blame, right? And I like to use an example, right? And this example would be a little bit away from this whole parent thing. Okay, let's say, think of this, and this is a real life example that happened. So in this country, there was a problem with water lah. Okay, so very hard to get water. Women had to like use this pump to get water. So then one day, a businessman, rich businessman, came to this village and said, "You know what? I have a brilliant idea. I will build this pump, but it's like a playground, you know. So the kids, when they play, they pump water, right? And so the idea got so like amazing, right? That everyone was like, oh, great idea. And they got such a big amount of funding. So they started building. So they built this pump in schools. And then initially it was okay. But then a year went past and they went back to look. All the pumps kat tepi jalan. Like your scooter, you know, that we used to be a thing and now it's just tepi jalan, macam tak ada orang guna. It was that. And kenapa? Because when it was built, everyone thought it was a great idea. It's same with parenting, right? Everyone feel like parent is the main thing to blame. Kalau we fix the parent, settled. Tak ada dah masalah. But we don't realize that actually, there's so many other things that need to happen in order for that solution to stick. Yes, you can, because then they realize, masa dia buat that thing, kids mula-mula rasa fun, but then it became a chore. Sebab I nak air, pergilah main. Kalau you tak main, I tak ada air. You know, so then what I'm trying to say that the solution really needs to be thought up properly. Yes. And I think we are so quick to want an overall solution. Something that everyone can adopt right away. You know, macam rotan lah. Terus rotan je. Clear cut. But the problem is, when we look at each one of these cases, lain. Even the two biggest one right now, right? The case Rogo dengan yang case Tikam. Both are very different situation. Both have very different root causes. We are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. We're not looking what's beneath it. And so if we just solve the atas one, so contohnya kalau orang buang sampah, kita kutip je, orang akan selalu buang sampah. And then it goes back to, okay, buang sampah, okay, I tahu dah orang buang sampah, I buat peraturan tak boleh buang sampah. Tapi masih ada orang buang sampah, betul tak? Ada tak tempat kita selalu bersih? Tak ada, sebab mindset belum tukar. So even though ada punishment, ada orang masih buat. So that is the hard one to solve, right? And what I'm trying to say is multiple layer that we have to really think about, and we have to be patient because mindset and all is not easy to change.
Kita ni suka jawapan yang pendek dan
Ya,
mudah nak faham lah
betul.
kan.
Mudah faham dan mudah dibuat. Semua orang buat yang sama, tapi manusia semua lain. I suka benda lain, you suka benda lain.
I will also say this lah, macam any solution that we have must be focused on the person itself, right? And we are so quick to try look for solutions that we forget who is at the heart of all of this is the child, and there are multiple layers for why a child becomes the child that they are, right? Like it could be the parents punya ajaran tak betul ke, or like it could be that they are influenced by peers.
It could be the internet. It could be.
It could be that. So it could be anything.
Or it could be all of the above.
Yes, exactly. You can't isolate it.
You are exposed to the internet. You don't have good role models around you. You are stuck in this echo chamber, and hence all these events that you see.
Or you are a good kid, and then you have friends who want to egg you on because you want to be part of that like cooler circle. Because the research tells us this, right? That like teenagers punya brain development only finalizes at 25.
Correct.
Which is like very...
That was something I learned as well.
Yeah, so it's very far from like the schooling years lah. So then they're still some trying to make all of these decision making skills too, they're still learning it, right? And they are always going to be impacted by the social experiences that they have as teenagers. Which is why like we see macam young people will always engage in more macam risk taking punya kind of behavior.
So I mean we'll be talking about the social media aspect of it later. Let me just wrap up this parenting thing by asking a question. Kerana, I mean, in both your jobs, like you said, you guys learn a lot, you read a lot, you have a lot of theories about parenting and so on and so forth, kan?
And live experience, I have like 3 boys.
No, which is my point. So, dalam the actual day-to-day stuff, how much of all this stuff, because we hear so much stuff, right? And it's impossible to implement all of it. So, if you had one guiding principle to tell all these various parents of various backgrounds with various amounts of time that they have with their kids and various situations, what would that guiding light principle be? In simple form.
Check and regulate yourself first. Because bila you nak marah, kan, you have to pause and you have to ask yourself, why you feel angry? What is causing your anger? And when you can pause and sort of return back to a green state lah orang kata. Macam like traffic lights when macam you have red, yellow and green. Red tu macam memang you
Defcon 3.
Goodbye everybody, kind of thing. Green is when you're like calm and you're emotionally regulated.
And it's an actual thing, I think people think that it's like analogy that is given, but it is it's an actual biological thing. Whereby there is this thing called amygdala hijack. I know we don't want to be very academic, but I think people need to realize this, right? That this is how your body responds. When you are overcome with emotion, your amygdala will take over as your main decision making. And that's why, for us who are in the green state right now, we would think like, murder is cannot imagine, because we're in a calm state where we are, and it's research proven, your IQ is the highest during that.
That's right.
And your IQ is the lowest when it's red. So I think that's important to acknowledge that it's a real thing that's happening in your body.
Itu pasal aku suka tidur lah.
And that's actually a coping mechanism, So macam check yourself and give yourself some distance lah, so that you can actually handle it in a logical manner. Because you're above 25, right? So your brain dah probably developed lah.
Way above 25. Okay, so we have another 3 very interesting comments about parents here. There's one that basically says like, you see lah, all these parents, with their kids running amok in shopping malls and unsupervised, blah, blah, blah. They're like feral animals.
So I did actually want the both of you to weigh in on benda ni, like the concept of permissive parenting. Are parents getting more lembut these days? Is that actually a thing?
A problem? Is it a problem?
Yeah, is it actually a problem that's real and bukan je apa orang ni tengah menghebohkan?
There are different kinds of
Mak
parenting. Okay,
cakap
so
dulu.
mak will cakap now lah. Okay, so there are different kinds of parenting. Four main ones. Satu is probably the ones that a lot of us 90s, 80s kids grew up with, like authoritarian parenting, where your parents' word is law, right? And then you have the other end of the spectrum, this permissive parenting that like people are talking about, where the parents takut dengan anak, so they want to be friends with their anak, and then macam, okay lah, you can do whatever you want, like just run, and then the parents will sit there and like, I don't know what else to do, you know, kind of thing. So there's a spectrum there, and there's the in between, which is authoritative parenting, which means that you can be the first port of call or the safe space for your children to share anything, but there are boundaries that you set up front with your child, and it goes back to like communication lah, you know, that you must establish these clear boundaries, and you must also have the space and the emotional regulation to make them understand what they're doing is wrong. You cannot reach that state when you are yourself angry and dysregulated, as we've discussed tadi, kan? So when you talk about how parents are like making their child like run amok and unsupervised at shopping malls, the other thing I would ask is, as an adult who observes these things, what are you doing? Okay, macam, you know, there's a reason why we say it takes a village to raise a child. And as a parent myself, if I see that someone else's child is at risk of hilang ke daripada mak bapak dia, I would pay attention. Macam in your shopping malls specifically, escalator kan, you see some kids like like to play at the side, so you tengok je lah, you tak payah buat apa-apa, is it? Because not my child, not my problem. So I think we all need to have this understanding that it's a collective responsibility.
I think
It's so funny that you mentioned escalators, because Aaron Paul Ang, literally underneath this, I censored it. He posted a picture of a kid's toe getting caught in an escalator.
This comes from lived experience. I know what I'm talking about.
clearly escalators are up there on like the list of things yang harm children.
And then the other one is talking about like, you know, didn't the parents notice something?
Yeah. So again, and the reason why I said tiba-tiba just now was because I think when the BU case occurred, I think the father came out stating he could not believe that his son was capable or something like that. Which
On that point, it was very interesting, because I think that my response to him saying that is different because I watched Adolescence on Netflix.
Interesting.
okay,
Yeah.
I
so
can see
run
that.
us through what was your
Granted, I mean, and
Response
Felicia, you've
first.
watched
Yeah,
it
I
as well,
watched it
right?
as well, yeah.
And it was the last episode. Okay, spoiler dulu This one is a spoiler So the kid did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because in the first episode, it wasn't that clear.
Yeah.
The acting
So
was
in the
pretty
first
good, I
episode,
have
you
to
don't
say.
know whether or
Yeah.
not the kid did it, but
Yeah.
yes, last episode they confirmed the kid did it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the last episode was how the parents were reacting to finding out that their son was actually a killer. You know, and it was the last scene. It was in a bedroom, I think. And the wife and the husband were talking, and they said, like, you know, I thought I did a good job of raising my kid, you know, and he was breaking down in tears, and he's saying, like, I've been a good father, haven't I, you know, and then the wife supported him and says, yes, I've also been a good, you know, I think you've been an excellent father and all that. And then they raised the point that they had another kid that turned out fine.
We raised them the same.
We raised them the
Yeah,
same.
yeah.
And that hit me, you know, and that moment hit me so much, because it's like, you can do everything correctly, and somehow the world can still come in and turn your kid into something else. And that really colored my response to hearing the father say
okay?
that.
And so when you heard the father's statement, the BU guys, like what did you think?
I thought I can
Was that-
empathize with
yeah.
him more than if I had not watched Adolescence on Netflix.
Interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
I think for me as well, right? We are always, as humans, we don't realize that we're always very quick to judge.
Yeah.
I think we're very easy to say like, takkan tak nampak apa-apa.
Yeah.
But what is it that you're supposed to see, right? I think people were thinking, takkan dia tak nampak like signs. But sometimes it's not even just sign of the child. Sometimes memang the child could really look fine, you know. But it's then other signs of seeing like, oh, my child is not very good at making friends. Or my child is spending a lot of time on the phone, you know, or being aware of these things that may not be connected to necessarily what is happening. And sometimes that's why is we feel like macam tak berkaitan. But actually some of these things berkaitan that we don't realize sebenarnya berkaitan.
Sorry, I wanted to ask you as well. Like for the Netflix thing, you haven't watched Adolescence.
I haven't watched it.
When the father said that, how did you feel?
The description you just gave, that was what I felt, but I had never watched the show.
Right.
So I'm going to.
My heart broke, you know, when I heard
No,
the father say that.
same. That ruined my day.
So I have a different read on this, or maybe macam slightly more like, tunnel vision sikit lah. But I thought it was interesting that it was the father saying it,
Not the mother.
not the mother.
Okay, why is that interesting to you?
Okay, so I work in gender kan, and so one of the things that we think is not connected, but actually is that the work of raising a child almost always falls to the mother. And so the father in many situations is the provider lah, orang say kan these days, the person who is responsible for like the finances and all that, but not the emotional well-being of the child. And so these sort of warning signs, as Felicia calls them, tends to fall under their radar. They don't pay attention to these things, and this is something that a lot of male sort of masculinity organizations have
It's like
found.
dia nampak tapi dia tak tahu itu ialah warning sign.
Yes.
Tapi dari segi Cina kan, there's a different perspective on this lah. Sometimes the wife don't want to talk when the husband is talking one lah. From that generation lah.
Oh, you mean like when interviewed?
Kau media? You talk lah.
There is that. But that's
there's
also
that too.
gender relations, right?
Yes.
Because macam who holds the responsibility for that? And then the kind of blaming sometimes that we have for mothers is also like next level. You see macam bila anak-anak tertinggal in the car ke or something like that kan, people always say, yalah, what's the mother doing, why did
So
this
the
happen?
mother's supposed to
kind of thing.
blame. Be blamed, sorry.
It would always be
That's interesting. I didn't think of that. Yeah.
So Chad raised the racial element to this, and I hate to do this.
it's fine.
Yes,
This is
I
Malaysia.
I do feel it's my journalistic duty to bring up the racial lens to this. So okay, contohnya, 10 years ago, no, 8 years ago, 2017 UPNM case,
Zulfarhan, my gosh,
murdered allegedly murdered by his classmates or whatever it was, and to this day I recall someone making the point, ni bapa budak pelajar BU ni dia dah buat kenyataan yang macam, I'm so sorry for what my son did. To this day, we've not heard anything from the parents of the accused in Zulfarhan's case. And some folks were making it a racial point. Is there truth to that? What do you think?
That's a very interesting.
There's no date question also, I am aware.
Yes. Never considered that.
Yeah, I think for me, sometimes I do think I can be a bit idealistic when it comes to. I think because I'm raised in a world where I'm aware of these things, so very conscious about racial and things like that. But I also have parents, so I don't want to go very deep into it. But my parents obviously are Chinese, right? And the things that they say can come across very racist. But I don't blame them, right? Because these are real experience that they do experience. So it's easy for us to say like, okay, orang ni racist dan sebagainya. But actually, if you actually get to know the person, you sort of understand. But we don't give them the excuse. I still, try to sort of talk to them that like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I understand why you want to say things like that. But you cannot generalize it. I think that the danger comes when we generalize it and we make it into a racial thing. I think I personally don't think that is the direction that we should go towards when it comes to this problem, because this problem can exist anywhere, not even just Malaysia. If Netflix did a show in the Western country, that means it's not a racial thing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that actually.
But also the other thing that we sometimes forget about is the age, right? So these UPNM punya students
Kids,
were in their 20s, and so there comes a point where we think that they should be responsible for their own actions
Gotcha.
too.
Could be that,
kan?
yeah.
So
Okay.
That the parents feel like it's on the kid lah.
Yeah.
Wow,
Potentially.
such a nuanced discussion. I love it. Yeah. Okay, I tell you what. We'll move to this first. This is emotional intelligence. Okay, so we're on to the topic of emotional intelligence. You guys said that kids their brains don't fully mature until they're 25. I
Yes.
believe it's a lot later. Then we talk about suicide cases. Yeah, so this is basically about how parents can encourage emotional intelligence, and also not necessarily parents, but also in school systems.
Actually, let me then also make the question a full one. So kita ada parents, kita ada non-parents, kita ada cikgu, kita ada non-cikgu kat sini. Maybe speak about it in regards to what can a parent do about it to help a child have emotional intelligence or well-being or whatever. What can a teacher do about it? What can an uncle do about it? What can a brother do about it? Like all these things.
And also the differentiation here between emotional intelligence and emotional regulation.
Okay. So I think I can start, right? So again, like the whole thing about the problem, right? It has to come, the solution also has to come in different form. Yeah. So I think what we've learned that actually you need to teach explicit instruction. So when it comes to emotional intelligence or regulation, it is sort of together. In this social emotional learning, it's both. You need to be able to regulate, but you also need to be able to identify and sort of be aware about what's going on. So all this, you have to actually teach these skills explicitly. Because I'll give you an example, right? Back then, it's very easy for the teachers to put you in group and say, okay, do a group project. And rarely people come out of a group project saying, I had such a great time. All my team members contributed to my group project equally and we had no problem. No, right?
Never.
And I think that's a problem. And a very easy example to relate whereby we never actually taught. We were lucky enough that we grew up eventually learning lah what is kerjasama, sama-sama. But you cannot expect kids, right, that actually for them to, and then we get upset, right? Kenapa korang gaduh? Cikgu kan suruh buat sama-sama. Kenapa tak boleh buat sama-sama? Padahal we never really taught them macam mana.
Yes.
What are some clear steps that you can take to actually collaborate together?
Tapi Felicia, you bring up an interesting point that you said that we all learned it on our own.
Yes, but then do we want to take that risk? Right? Do we want to let it go? But and comes back to my calming waters, right? So if the water is all calm now, why don't we explicitly teach some of these skills? Because some of us learn it, and you can attest to not all adults eventually learn it. In the working world, masih ada adult yang you rasa macam budak ni memang tak contribute apa-apa, dah dewasa pun tak buat. You know? And we don't want to go into that, right? So why not teach it explicitly? And because it's a skill, right, we cannot expect I ajar you sekali, you buat elok-elok. Dia macam lari, or you start a new sport, pickleball now, all the rage kan. Mula-mula orang main macam pelik so awkward people play, I don't know if you've seen. But now everyone's an expert, you know, because pickleball courts everywhere. So emotional regulation, emotional intelligence is a skill that you have to develop, and people have to understand that it takes time and you need to allow students to practice it, allow your child to practice it. And I think that's the difficulty, because we are often impatient and we often, and also we think that society is judging us, so kita tak boleh biar anak macam nampak not regulated. But that could be part of the process. You know, contohnya the kid could be throwing tantrums, but I tak nak bagi dia main phone. But that is the process lah. Kena stop. Tak boleh. Sekarang makan, kita sembang. But along the way, it will look very messy. And we as adult, we have to be okay with it.
Nampaknya macam pendidikan karakter ni is for the parents, not for the kids.
Tidak,
exactly.
It's both, right? So I think, so that's come to the system, right? So first, budak kena diajar explicitly. You need explicit instruction so that nobody gets frustrated in the situation. Anak tak rasa you tak pernah ajar I, and then you tak rasa kenapa you benda ni pun tak tahu. Okay, so you will teach it explicitly. And then dia kena ada opportunity to implement it. So that's the thing that I say lah, you kena ada opportunity to do, and then dia kena ada environment that supports it. Of course, these are all very ideal, right? A lot of things need to change. But if we want to move, really take a big step forward, that's what we need. We need the environment. People need to be okay. People need to be good role models, whereby parents themselves are modeling. And I can give you a very clear example. In school, right? I can say one thing, but my student will never remember what I say, but they remember what I do. They will follow what I do rather than what I say. There was once I was talking about more like, lepas hujan, my kids like to give excuse, lepas hujan next day tak datang. And they actually then use back the same things, but that's what I do, you know. So they pick up things that you do, not so much things that you say. So then that comes to that environment. That's why it's not a quick fix.
So dari segi emotional regulation and intelligence, basically what you're saying is, if there was one piece of advice that you would give parents, is become good role models
Yes.
for emotional regulation and emotional intelligence lah.
I think before that, right, maybe reflect on ourselves. What is it that we personally may not have?
Yeah.
And how do we then learn that so that we can model it for our students?
Parenting is
applies
really
for
on-job
everyone.
training.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
macam
pretty
the-
much everyone.
Applies to me as an uncle, you
Exactly.
as a teacher.
For sure.
Yeah.
I will give you an example, like in my own home, right? So one of the things that I am like I have worked through is this emotional dysregulation, even for me. Okay, macam lots of things. Like I won't unpack my trauma here, tetapi it is that we were probably not taught this skill, right, to regulate our own emotions. I've learned it as an adult, I think. Most of the time, okay lah, boleh lah, successful lah juga. One of the things that I do is when I can feel myself getting really angry, like I will tell my children, I need space. And so that sets
Yeah,
like
you
an actual
verbalize it.
physical boundary so that I'm explicitly telling you, these are my needs right now, and so you will receive this. Okay.
And as an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and 2-year-old, they understand this.
My 8-year-old and my 5-year-old do this for themselves.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
they will go when they are macam, you know, and the thing with my kids or kids in general, 1 second they are like best friends, right? Next second
Yeah.
gaduh, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
next
yeah.
second
Yeah.
best friends again. But when it gets too much for them, they will actually say, I need space,
Yeah.
and they will go into their room,
Amboi.
tutup pintu.
And I want to say this, right? So this is her kid, and you may think like, Fariha educator, you know, mesti anak dia macam tu. But in my context of marginalized children, so we teach in social emotion learning with our students, and the young ones, in fact, they are the ones that pick it up the best.
Yeah.
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 When now my students when they fight, one kid will go to them, please go drink water first. Go, you know, and then and somehow they will see, okay, not working, they go and take slime, play slime lah, go play slime for a while, you know, ask them to calm down first.
Boy.
Yeah,
Bro, chill,
yeah,
bro.
yeah, and we think that like maybe young kids don't understand, but they are the ones that I think absorb it the quickest.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And they will
You learn this someday lah. Yeah. As a parent, I'm seeing it right now. Also, my kid is picking things up so fast.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think beyond explicit instruction is also being able to name that feeling, right?
Yeah.
So
To be able to what? Sorry.
name
Name
that
the
feeling.
feeling. Okay.
So, and again, I speak from the lens of macam boys versus girls,
Yeah.
kan? So with girls, we are encouraged almost, like our environment allows us to express all the range of emotions. You know, so you can be moody, you can be angry, you can be happy. Tapi for boys, when they're feeling all sorts of like overwhelming feelings, it almost always manifests in anger because we think boys will be boys, and the only way they can menzahirkan this emotion is through anger.
Oh, we tell them what, tak boleh nangis what.
We
So
say
if
boys
you tak
cannot cry.
nangis, I marah lah. You know?
So what else? What other emotional alternatives are there for them? So helping them name this and naming why actually helps them to regulate balik, tau.
Okay.
Aku nak tanya tentang pendidikan karakter again. Is there any provision to educate parents as well in this syllabus?
I think so. It's very difficult for it to come from ministry, right?
Yep.
Because they already have to take care of the kids. They have to, like you say, so many teachers that they have to train to make sure that this is executed well. So I think we do want to make sure that it's inclusive, right? We, like I said lah, you cannot just teach the kids, because when they go home, and we see that as well, they'll tell us, you know, cikgu suruh kita jangan pukul dan sebagainya. Saya balik rumah, saya nampak mak saya buat benda yang sama. You know, they'll ask questions like this. So of course, in the ideal world, we want to do that. But whether it is on the ministry to then include it into this pembangunan character, I think it requires a lot more planning lah. And we have to then maybe take one step at a time, and then create that overall environment. Yeah.
So it's hard to imagine that, especially in this case of the BU kid, that he had very many real connections. Would that be a fair assumption, or is that being judgmental on my part?
I think I don't want to say so much because we don't really know the context.
Fair.
But I do think it's important. Like
Yeah.
I was discussing with my students about this, right? I think one thing the teachers can already do is really just talk about this with your students, right? Or even as parent, ask your kid, like, how do you feel with all these things happening? So I did this with my students, and interestingly, we were talking about this.
So you asked your students what they thought of the stabbing?
what was happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like how affected were they, and what, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the main question just now that you said?
I also lost already. But I actually wanted to ask, like, you talked to your students
Yes.
about this stabbing.
Yes.
And what was their response?
So, okay, there was a variety. So I had my teacher that talked to the primary. I talked to my older, so I teach Form 4, Form 5 students.
Okay.
With the younger ones, it was surprising that this is also then when we can see who were the ones that really needed extra help. So when we talked to some of the students, it was interesting that majority of them, when we asked them, how do you feel about what is happening, all of them felt like, it was very heavy. But one particular student, actually without hesitation, stood up and said, and dia gelak dia cakap, ni karma. And everyone
What the freak?
everyone was surprised. And I think we were relieved to see that everyone else was surprised. But this is already a way for us to know, okay, that is the red sign. That is the warning sign. And we would not know if we don't discuss about
That's
it.
right.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
You know,
I see.
even though it's very shocking for us, and I didn't feel good listening, but that also reflected on me that, like, okay, now we know this kid needs help.
And
yeah.
did that conversation continue from there?
Yeah, so
thereafter?
afterwards.
Okay.
So I think, so then we sort of decided that, okay, this is something maybe we probably have to get expert in as well.
Wow.
Am I right to assume it was a boy that said that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so then we move on to the next topic, which is phones, right? And a lot of parents, a lot of kids, a lot of ministries, a lot of schools are asking for bans of phones up until 17. Now, first, there's a few aspects of this. One is, do we ban it in schools? Do we ban it at home? And the other one is like, is this really going to make any effect whatsoever? Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this? Both of you.
loaded.
So I can start lah. I think in terms of the school perspective, I do agree, especially primary. I would say for me that is like definite no phone in school. Now whether to ban at home or completely, I think that needs to come with care, because often we like to ban something and then we don't give choice. Now when we don't give choice, or we don't teach them that, like, go and be bored, make your own game, because that was what we used to do, or at least what I used to do. I made a tree house in the staircase of my home, right? We just say tak boleh. Then they will sneakily find ways to get back on the phone. Because you bagi tahu I tak boleh, tapi I tak tahu apa lagi I nak buat. I dah hooked on the phone.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that is very important to acknowledge that we can ban, and we should in school especially, because kids need to learn to make social connection. I do personally think, and again, this is my personal opinion, I think that when students find it difficult to make physical connection with people, like social physical connection, they turn to the internet. They turn to online, where when they have difficulty interacting, they go online, and then that is where you don't know who are you talking to, and that's the dark hole that you go into. And oftentimes, the ones that go into it are people that are not good at making friends. Again, we go back to the assumption, right? We're saying, kids, you go and make friends yourself lah. We make friends, no problem. Why need to teach? But some of these things, we may need to teach them.
It's not easy way making friends.
Exactly, we have to teach them that, okay, if you tak berjaya kat sini, maybe you have to find something that you all like ke, or if tak ada anything we like, we make something. Okay, you like a bit of that, we come up with something new that we both can do. These are the things that I rasa tak ada. And for me, I wouldn't say outright ban in school, home and things like that. I think you can ban if you then also teach them, okay, tak ada phone, main benda lain. And I just want to add very quickly, so in our learning center, we memang dah ban lah for the younger kids. But we tell them, okay, first we discuss, kalau tak ada phone buat apa? So then they will say, okay, nak main bola boleh? I say, okay, main bola. So then we encourage them to really play with each other, to the point where the other day, something amazing happened, right? They all didn't have phone, but they were waiting. So this was after Solat Jumaat. They were waiting for the girls to came back. So we would have girls club while the boys go for Friday prayers. So the girls were doing their activities, so the boys were together, and they were bored lah, because they came back early. Now azan kan awal.
Yes.
So they came back and then they were like bored. And then we just observe lah, the boys. Suddenly, I don't know lah, now they love these sap. And these are teenager. They gathered, started with a small circle, they played that, and then it became a whole big circle, like a drum circle thing. And so sometimes you just have to let them be bored lah, and see what they come up with.
Huh. How interesting.
That's
agree.
that's an amazing story.
As a parent, I agree. I think, so one of the things that we don't have at home is a TV. Even I know this is I sometimes bring my son's friends back, so for Salat Jumaat we take some of them home, and then my husband brings them to Salat Jumaat, so that they get that opportunity and the community around them, that kind of thing. And then one of the kids walks into the house and he's like, where's the TV? I said, we don't have space for a TV. And then he's like, wow, it's like back in the 70s. I'm like, excuse you. But this child also has asked me, why don't you let your child have a device? And then he's like, why doesn't he have his own device? And I said, well, we don't think that that's something we want him to have right now. And so stating that boundary up front and just saying it in a very age-appropriate sort of way actually made me think, oh, interesting. And this is also the same child who has talked to me or like asked me about Charlie Kirk. You know?
About what, sorry?
Charlie Kirk. Like, do you remember?
Oh, Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
So, proof that like children, no matter how young, will find ways to access any news that crosses their feed out there, and like will go down their own rabbit hole, right? And so I think there's a parental role here to be played. I know a lot of people say, okay, ban social media and all of that before 16. And that happens in Australia. But what we also don't realize is that in Australia, you cannot, employers cannot contact their workers after a certain hour because they want to intentionally prioritize like family life.
Family time is family
outside.
time.
So all of these things are connected, right? Because why do parents give their children phones to begin with?
Yeah.
Because that's the in-house babysitter, right?
Yeah.
And so there are all these other factors that we need to consider as well.
I did want to have a counterpoint, but I did want to ask. So, contohnya, talking about removing screen time ataupun social media time, and in a world where life is getting increasingly online and connected, and to what extent does removing that field of experience from children or teenagers, whatever, does that set them up for not failure, but does that kind of make them tak prepared to
That's a very
handle
fair
the
question.
world?
I will say that my children still get access to my phone, but what I do is I have a timer that they have to go with. So the key, I think, is to always have a balance. It's not ban them completely because we can't protect them from everything, but we can journey alongside them together and help them learn these kinds of strategies.
And I think quickly building on, right, is then teaching the skill. So that's why for me, right, primary is very easy for me to say not having, because at that time you belum ada masa nak ajar. So bila diorang dah ajar the skill, eventually they will use a phone that you can never stop them.
Yeah.
And so is to use that opportunity to teach them the right skills so that when they have that full access to mobile phone, to the internet, they can do it well and they don't fall into the trap.
So I think I was talking to somebody else about this. Tricia, if you're watching this, this part is something that we discussed, which is that when we heard about the Australian social media ban, we were quite quietly cheering, because one of my biggest fears as a parent, and my girl is a daughter, right, is that when she reaches a certain age, right, I don't think her brain will be ready for social media until a much deeper age. Because even seeing my personal usage of social media, right, the dopamine hit is real. All of us face it on a day-to-day basis, right? We get a like on our post or a comment on our post, you got, like there's this like dopamine hit. And if you're a kid, you're going to act very instinctually on that. Whereas as adults, maybe, we have a little bit more logic into it. Okay, maybe there's too much phone time, let's go and do something else, right? And it's literally engineered to make you addicted.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So the biggest problem, the biggest upside of a ban is the social pressure, which I wanted to ask you about, because your son is 8 years old, right?
That's right.
And he's got other friends who've got TVs, got access to phones and all that kind of thing. So how do you solve that issue of all the other kids saying, hey, we're all on social media, bro, where are you?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and why are your
It's,
parents so
yeah,
cruel to
that's-
you? To ban you from social
Yeah.
media? What, your mom living in the 70s, is it?
TV also don't have.
I was born in the 70s. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Okay, thanks, I guess. And firstly, I think this goes back to this idea of like, firstly, very quick response, the permissive parenting versus authoritative parenting, right? Like permissive means go ham, do whatever you want, you know, but that's not the case. The case, the way to help them develop safely is to have these boundaries and parameters that you set up front.
And they understand it
And they
also.
understand it. You have to walk them through that lah. So with the peer pressure, when the kids ask, oh, where are you and all of that stuff, they actually use my WhatsApp. So if they want to talk, if my son wants to talk to his friends, for example, he can talk to them through WhatsApp or these other like platforms that they're on, but it has to be on my device, so I can look at it all the time. I'm not limiting his access to his friends outside of school, but it's done in a sort of safer way, so I can also check if something untoward is potentially going to happen.
But how do you explain this to him?
I tell him that these are the parameters that we have as a family. This is what we do, and they know that because it's been years that we've as Felicia said, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So we have done this in a very sort of age appropriate way for them. So far there hasn't been any issue. We also have talked about the phone. He's asked, when did you get your first phone? Challenging authority, right? Which is great, because that means he's trying to learn what the boundaries are. So he will ask me, when did you get your first phone? I said, I got it at 13. And then he's like, why? I say, because I went to boarding school. Sorry lah to all the people who are like reading this or like listening to this. Yes, I bawa phone. But I said that was because I was away from home, and the phone then looked very different from the phone now.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it was like 20 cents. You find a boyfriend who like has the same like provider as you, right? So that your name is like 5 cents, 1 cent, whatever. But I told him that he is not going to be allowed this because he doesn't want to go to boarding school. So I position it or frame it as a natural like follow on of consequences from the decisions that he has decided. But to do all of that really does take time.
Yep.
The other thing I would say is that social media looks very different for boys and girls.
Yes.
So girls, macam we've seen that they are more likely to be stressed by other people punya physical images. They will compare themselves to like celebrities, use all of these filters. I don't know if you got like nieces and you can see
And
me.
actually, there's a lot more gossip with girls.
yeah.
A lot more like in front of each other, they're like all good. But in the social media world, all sorts of like back talking,
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
very real. We
Yeah.
see that. I see that a lot in my students.
Yeah. And for the boys, they have all of this sort of toxic masculinity
Yep.
sort of cultures that they can learn if their access is sort of unsupervised
Yeah.
almost.
Which is actually the one of the other topics they want to talk about
well,
as well, which is incel culture. Kan? Now this incel culture thing is really, really hot right now. I think maybe because adolescents actually brought it into light. To be honest with you, before adolescence, I did not know about it in that light
okay.
before. That it was encouraging violence by men
Towards-
onto women by creating a sense of entitlement. Tapi I think Felicia, earlier on you mentioned something that was very interesting, which is that kind of line of thinking,
Yeah.
without calling it incel culture, has existed in Malaysia for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, like you broke down the definition of it, right? I think when people first hear it, people will be like, tak adalah mana ada, what is this word? But when you then break it down, what is the meaning, many would then realize, oh, you know what, it's
Sama je.
normal. Yeah, sama lah. It's what people say toxic masculinity is lah. You know, that man has the right to feel a certain way, to act a certain way towards women. You know, and I say right not because I think it is, but it's just what people are perceiving in this whole incel punya concept. Yeah.
Actually, it's also related to gender relations, right? Like, and the norms that we have set up as a society, how we think men should be seen and also how we think women should be seen. I think it's very important to recognize that both men and women can be victims and perpetrators at the same time.
Yep.
So to be able to macam really go to the heart of it, we have to ask ourselves as a society, what are we doing in our daily lives that may be unconsciously perpetuating this kind of norm? Like for example, if you're at home, who does the like chores? Is it the mum? Or why do we automatically in schools, for example, kalau kindergarten, you automatically call the mum kalau anak tu sakit? Why? Why do we have this assumption that mothers are the primary parent responsible? So it's these kind of things, right? Like, and this idea that boys will be boys, you are feeding this beast of
And recently, that was one of, even before all this blew up, and very interesting in terms of the timing, just a few weeks back, we had this case with one of our students. This boy, very gentle, he's very young, he's only this year 9-10 years old, and then suddenly we saw him become very violent. Quite an overnight change, and we were trying to figure out what's going on.
Sorry, how old?
9-10 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's quite a sudden change. And so when we found out a bit more, we found out that the mother was telling him, boys cannot cry. So he's very sensitive. So he would cry quite easily. And we found out that actually the mother has been telling him, don't cry. Now the mother is not coming from a place where, she is against all this. It's more, I'm trying to protect my son, right? Because we have this culture. That's why this whole concept of men being a certain way is not necessarily new. So the mom is just trying to protect, because in the mom mind thinking like the image of a man is that lah, kena kuat. And apa tu kuat? Kuat ialah physical kuat. Tak boleh tunjuk emosi, so emosi yang saya boleh tunjuk marah je, sebab itu buat saya nampak kuat. And there was a change straight away in the kid. Bila terus mak dia cakap jangan nangis, he then just started lashing out and instead of crying, which was actually okay, dia pergi pukul balik lah.
Right.
Actually, another thing that came up for me as I was, talking to other parents about what are some of the harm reduction strategies that they have seen play out, right? And there was this one example that a friend shared yesterday, where this ustaz has seen that the young boys, about 13, 14, are, they will put any creative swearer out there to shame lah. They will swear, they will ponting sekolah and all of these like things that you associate with sometimes like with a teenage boy, right?
Yep.
And recognizing that that was a problem in their own like local community, the ustaz said, okay, why don't we gather a group of fathers to actually work together to bring these boys out for different kinds of outings or like activities in between the Salat Maghrib and Isha, I think. So they do all sorts of activities together, and what they saw is that these boys stop swearing. These boys have this sort of positive male role models around them that they can look to as examples.
Nice.
And that's what I mean when I say that we all must think about our own individual roles like what we can do.
Understand.
With regards to incel culture and the differences in the gender relationships, you guys have both worked in cities and also in rural areas. Are there key differences in Malaysia of these kind of gender relationships in urban versus rural environments?
I think at the end of the day, it's what you're exposed to. So somewhat, even when you think about mobile phones, you may think like rural tak ada, but mobile phone in fact rural yang paling ada. Sebab dia orang tak ada TV anything, they rely solely on the phone. In fact, there was an article recently, right, that talk about actually the people that lose out the most when it comes to like all this negative effect of internet is the poorest community. Because manalah ada parents yang ada masa to teach all these things. And the rich and the privileged ones are the ones that realize how dangerous it is. I don't know if you've seen this. There was this thing that was going on internet whereby they say all the creator of tech, all those big name, semua anak diorang tak pegang phone punya. Because they realize how dangerous the internet can be. Or they really limit. And so they did a research, about this, and they realized that actually the ones that are most affected by the negative effect of internet are the poorest community. And so whether or not there's a difference in terms of like whatever they know, I think the concept is there. It's just what term is it being put on, and then how is it play around? Again, is if the environment exists, it can exist anywhere.
For instance, right, a few of my friends' parents have noticed that, and I don't know whether this is true, but what they notice is that kids who go to international schools especially tend to get sexualized a lot earlier than kids outside in normal rural schools or Chinese schools or government schools.
This is my personal opinion lah. I think it's just terms. So in international school, they when a case happen, it's put very in terms that we see that it's happening in like that. You can call it incel and things like that. So you see like, okay, this is happening. But in other rural school, I would say it happens. So we hear, especially if you're in national school, so many of these cases with regards to sexual harassment and so on, so many happening, but we may not necessarily name it as such. That's why then you think like macam tak ada, macam international school punya nampak macam lebih hangat. But sebenarnya ada je. Sometimes again underreporting because in those contexts you wouldn't want to. It's very shameful. It may be very shameful for me to actually even report.
But I mean, from my own personal experiences, so I don't feel like these kind of sexual conversations even happened when I was 8 years old or 9 years old. So what has changed in the last 20, 30 years? Now we're hearing about 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, talking about sexual things, having sexual assault cases. I've heard personal stories about these kind of things. There is a definite sexual youth, progress towards even younger. How is this happening across the board?
Availability, right? I think it goes back to a lot of that. We see it, I see it in my students as well. And that's the thing, right? I talk about the whole calming water teach skill. So because we thought that recently we found out a case of a 12-year-old boy was sending inappropriate pictures to younger boys, 10 years old boys. Yeah. And we only found out because the 10-year-old boy that we were teaching a lot of SEL reported to us. He said he felt so uncomfortable that this boy added him to a group and sent all these inappropriate pictures.
Not of himself, but of other girls.
And it's forwarded images.
Right.
Forwarded images.
Yeah.
Right? So it's available out there. And we found out because this kid was taught this preventive way to know that this is inappropriate and reported it to us. And so then we can take action.
In an instance like that, what would action entail?
So we believe, so I believe more on restorative practices. So again, then finding out from that boy, right, one, where do you get these pictures? What is your intention? Because a lot of times, if you really talk to the kid, this particular case, the kid intention was to actually just to get people to like him. He thought it was cool to send pictures like this to
That would be
people.
my first guess, actually.
Yeah. And knowing that, then the punishment is not so much like, punish him for sending this. Is then one, yes, setting that clear boundary that there's consequence and saying that no, you cannot, but also teaching them what other ways you can be cool with your friends, not this. Because if not, I will go and figure out myself. I will do something else that I think is cool, and it may be something even worse. Maybe they think next thing to be cool is vape. That's the next level, right? And that's worse.
Yep.
So in the area of work that I do, right, like we talk about things like rape culture, for example, that can be very triggering. But also the idea of rape culture is that it doesn't start with the actual like sexual violence, It's the lower level things like normalizing jokes that are lewd in classes.
Yeah.
It's just using
Calling names and things like that.
and using like inappropriate words.
Yeah.
And we think that those things are okay because ala sikit je, that kind of thing. And remember when Ain's case, like Ain Husniza, right? Like when she called out a teacher for saying what they said, the comments that came to her and the
Terrible.
attacks,
Yeah.
terrible. But that actually speaks to the kind of gender norms that we
Yeah.
already have ingrained in our society at large.
And that's a national school, right?
Yeah.
And if I think back on my own personal high school experience, I have seen that happening in my own school.
How?
But again, calling names, inappropriate names that the teacher was calling to the student. But again, at that time, right, because I think you're not so exposed, you also don't know how to speak up. Not everyone's like I, right, where you feel like, okay, I'm brave enough to say. Sometimes you may just feel super uncomfortable and you don't know what to do. So it just goes unreported. And that's why I think there's that tendency to see like, oh, maybe international school nampak macam banyak of this case. But actually, if you really think back, and if you ask many high school, national school goers, more often than not, they've seen it. Just that tak tahu macam mana nak buat apa.
Actually, when I was in school, macam when I was in standard 2, and I remember this incident so clearly because I went to an all-girls school, and the teacher actually perpetrated an act of sexual violence on some of my classmates.
Primary school?
In primary school, because and the context was this, right? Like we had a times table pop quiz, okay? So everybody had to stand up, you know the drill, right? Okay, you 2 times 4, like 6 times 3, whatever. And the people who didn't know the answer, the teacher just pulled down their kain baju kurung. It's an all-girls school, and it's a good all-girls school. And the teacher who perpetrated this was female herself.
Oh boy.
So, you know, this was 30 plus years
And
ago.
put on the pants and just leave him
And just
the whole day without pants.
less than that, she was a class teacher. So no, this kind of violence went unchecked and like I said, underreported.
Yeah.
And even for me, as someone who has worked in like gender and education, it didn't come up until I took a creative writing class. And then suddenly this like
Baru teringat.
Baru, like trigger you to like.
and then that got me thinking, oh my gosh, like so this is not new.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff. Tu satu.
Wow.
Boarding school, we haven't even gone down that pathway.
Yeah.
So
Messed up.
Yeah.
yeah. It's heavy stuff.
You're making me
I
very
guess
afraid of my
Maybe
daughter's
we can try
teamwork.
ending this on a more hopeful note, like in
Yeah.
terms of just like, you know, we've covered so many different facets of parents, culture, teachers, how we raise their kids and everything. What are some silver linings you guys have noticed that kind of give you a little bit of hope that we can
Yeah.
get ourselves on the right direction?
Especially in the context of this shocking incident that happened, right? I think the first thing that happened is everyone's talking about it, right?
That's true.
Now, how do you guys rate those conversations that are happening around you right now? Number one, and number two, also with regards to the government has been coming out and talking a lot about it as well. Have you guys noticed any positive things happening in there?
Yeah.
You want
I can maybe speak on the like you know on ground community type experience. I am hopeful. I mean, despite all of these things that we've like you know spent time unpacking, I'm hopeful because the parents that I know and the parents who are more conscious about these things are now thinking, what can I do?
Okay.
And you know, and where a generation ago, maybe the men. I mean, I will say this: the men thought of themselves as just the like financial providers. Now they are a lot more hands-on with the parenting of their own children, and so this willingness to learn and transcend sort of the gender roles that we have is something that's making me quite hopeful. Number one. Number two, in the days after this, a person who I haven't talked to in a long time like reached out asking me. So I've gone ahead and asked my condo if they wanted any parent education or workshops or like gender education workshops. I know some people who can do this. I'm wondering if there's any interest, and there was interest. And so my point is that there are people out there who are ready to act within their own locus of control, as you call it. So these are the things that are making me hopeful, because as teachers we know that the human development is not overnight, and we have to have this kind of generational awareness so that the next generation will hopefully do better. Of course, I'm also a parent, so I'm hoping that like even with my own 3 kids, if they can, which they're already doing, if they can tell me I need space, they can name their proper body parts with the proper like scientific name and use it. If they can already be influencing their friends to speak up when there are these incidents that are happening, I think we are on a good path, hopefully.
So I guess Felicia, if that was macam
and I
students,
think
etc.
that is the silver lining, right?
Okay.
That like parent before this may not necessarily want to talk about feelings, now realize maybe we do have to talk about feelings. Maybe we do have to put emphasis and attention on this. So that I think is the positive side of media bringing a light, because we've been discussing this the whole time that, you know, it's not something new. What is new is that now it's being put on a spotlight and people are looking into the issue.
Yeah, media bagus.
So I think that is a silver lining, right? And I think the good thing for students now is that if it is something that's happening to you, the hope is that to know that there are things being done, you can reach out, and adults now are also willing to listen. I think we have to acknowledge and give credit that, when you look at this comment, of course there are some not so positive, but actually I'm pretty surprised that majority of it is in a position where they genuinely want to do something. They are asking genuinely, how can I do, what can I do? And I think that in itself is the silver lining, right? For us to really not be so fixated on all the negative things, on people criticizing what is being said, but looking at the fact that there are so many people that is open to seeing what we can do and what we can do collectively. And even with schools and education, right? I know there's this whole argument of like, oh, what is the minister doing and things like that, but the fact that the minister is doing something, the fact that there is this pembangunan character that is going to happen, rather than criticizing it or saying it, another subject, another burden, perhaps the comment could be, how do you think this can be implemented, should be implemented, so that, it is something that the government, hopefully with enough voice, they would listen and will be part of the execution, because it's not done yet, right? So there is still a lot of room for us to really think about what we want this pembangunan character to be, rather than being so negative and putting our past experience into this and our past trauma and thinking like nothing's going to work, another quick fix to the thing. If we could think a little bit deeper, okay, if it's not a quick fix, how can we make sure that this is the right fix?
And don't absolve ourselves of that responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
we all have this part to play lah. Can't stress that
Yeah.
enough.
As simple as being a good role model, honestly. Yeah.
And with that, I think we can close today's podcast. Thank you so much for your enlightenment.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Felicia. Thank you so much, Fariha.
Thank
and
you.
if you guys enjoyed this podcast, leave your thoughts on what this conversation did for you, if there are any takeaways. And as always, keep it on chili sauce for current issues and more. Tambah pedas. Thank you so much for watching Siapa Makan Cili.
And if you like what you saw, please hit that subscribe button or follow us at Chili Sauce Mai on IG, Instagram, or if you're OG like me, on Facebook.
And if you have guests you'd like us to bring onto the show, leave them in the comments below and we'll try our best to get them on.